Welcome to the Balanced Hormones Empowered Women podcast. I am your host, Abby Vallejo, registered dietitian, certified personal trainer, and health coach. And what I do is I teach women of all ages how to align their diet, their lifestyle, and their exercise with their hormones in order to unlock their most vibrant health in a feminine based approach of working smarter and not harder. So today I am thrilled to bring Chef Jasmine Fullwood on the podcast. I really wanted to have Jasmine on because not only is she an amazing chef, she's also gluten-free. And you guys know I'm gluten-free. Eating gluten-free is really important to me, but sometimes it can be challenging. So I really wanted to get her expertise on all things gluten-free. So first of all, I would love to start off, Jasmine, with let's just break it down for our listeners in case they're not familiar. We've all heard gluten-free, but what actually is gluten? What foods have gluten? Why is gluten such a thing? Why is it such a problem?
hmm So for me, the easiest way that I explain to people what gluten actually is, basically it's a protein found in grass-like grains such as wheat, barley, rye, those things that your body basically doesn't agree with. So it reacts like any other allergy or sometimes a little bit different. Yeah.
Yeah, so
It,
I'm glad that you said allergy because that's another thing that I wanted to clear up is that an allergy and there's an intolerance, right? So we have the people that are actually celiac and that's an allergy that's more severe. And then we have other people like myself who are gluten intolerant. And so the way that we can really differentiate, what the differences are there is an allergy is always going to involve the immune system.
Mhm.
Allergy is going to be a more severe reaction. When we think of allergic reaction, we think of like hives or difficulty breathing, which certainly can happen. Obviously, with gluten, you can also get like the GI distress, like the digestive upsets can start happening. And the key is they'll probably start happening right away, like within minutes, maybe up to a couple hours, but it's a quick reaction, like that you're having a problem, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's celiac versus an intolerance doesn't actually involve the immune system. So an intolerance can be uncomfortable, but it's never going to be like life-threatening or dangerous. And it usually takes much longer to actually feel those symptoms. So that could be, it would take at least a few hours. I tend to find with me, it could be up to like 8 hours or 16 hours later, once that gluten has already passed through your stomach and gone into your intestines, and it's on that journey through your intestines, then you might start feeling like bloated or abdominal pain. You might get some diarrhea. So, kind of more of those lower GI symptoms. So that's really the difference between an allergy and intolerance. So, I would love to hear Jasmine because I know everyone who's gluten-free, we always have some type of backstory, like, whether we had digestive troubles growing up, like I did, that started to become worse over time, or if it's something we learned about and got curious about. So I would love to hear your story. Like, what's your gluten-free story?
I think growing up, we weren't the richest kids. Everything was pretty frugal. Um, so we ate a lot of processed food, everything canned, frozen, anything that was really cheap, powdered potatoes, which were the worst.
Powdered potato.
As I got to culinary school, I started noticing more and more stomach issues, especially during the baking classes. And
Mm.
lots of bloat, put on lots of weight, and lower energy. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm not even in my
Mhm,
20s yet.
mhm,
Over time, started to do more research. I kind of got into it because me and my boyfriend at the time, uh, we would decided to do a paleo diet, which is
okay.
basically just eating meats and vegetables. It's called the caveman diet for some.
Mhm,
Strictly like no sugar, no legumes, rice, all that stuff that can turn into sugars as well. So it's just
exactly.
basically proteins and vegetables. So after the first month, it kind of just like cleared everything out. After the first month, I start reintroducing things back in, like rice. And I would notice that the glucose in the rice would like make me shaky, different things like that.
Mhm.
Um, but I didn't want to give up rice.
I know, right?
Even dairy, my stomach would get bubbly, but I didn't want to give up dairy.
Mhm.
So when I tried to start eating gluten again as well, I would break out in hives. I would feel like I'm hungover and food
Mm,
poisoned at the same time, just
mhm,
miserable.
mhm.
So it was to the point where I had to give up gluten
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah. Because you
uh,
were having a clear allergic reaction to it.
exactly. And
Yeah.
then over the years of it, of me really not eating it, the allergy became more and more pronounced, I guess you can say.
Mhm.
Where now if I eat it, I don't just break out in hives. Within 30 minutes, I know if I had it or not. It's kind of like
Mhm.
a warning sign that the body's giving. And if I don't regurgitate it or whatever the case may be, if it's like a quarter piece of bread, I'm gonna
Mhm.
know it in minutes and my body's gonna react to try to get it out the best way it can before it gets all the way
Yeah.
in, like you
Yeah.
said earlier, all the way through your digestive tract.
Yeah. It's gonna give you signs for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, that's another really good point that you brought up. You were mentioning like the dairy and, like some other things that you were kind of reacting to, albeit, not in an allergic way. And so I think I just wanted to clarify for people. So often we also see people who are sensitive, who have a lot of inflammation going on. We also might be sensitive to dairy. And again, same difference. There's the dairy actual allergy where you have that reaction right away versus just an intolerance. It sounds like in your case, that's more of an intolerance.
Um, After reintroducing it into my body, it got back on track. So dairy doesn't bother me, but paying attention and being more aware of allergies, especially dealing with gluten, I can tell that corn and soy as well bother me. Like I can eat
Yes.
corn chips if I'm out at a restaurant,
Mhm.
and I'll be fine. But with those, it's the amounts that are introduced into my body. So I have to be careful. I don't want to sit there and eat a whole bowl of the corn chips
Yes.
because then I'm probably going to walk out pretty
Right.
tight
Yep.
around the waist
Yeah.
by the
You're
time
gonna be
dinner's
paying
over.
for it.
So it's
Yeah,
just
and that's another good point too, is with intolerances especially, and I find this, I tend to give people an analogy like a bucket, right? Where we start with an empty bucket and everything that we're exposed to, especially things that our body reacts to, they fill up the bucket. And so when you have an intolerance, a lot of times that'll manifest a little bit later in life because, when you're younger, your bucket's still pretty empty. And the more, the years go by, the more food you get exposed to, especially those, irritants or bad food, the more your bucket starts to fill up. And so that's why when we do something like an elimination diet, like you said, takes about a month, that inflammation starts clearing, your body and your gut starts healing, we feel great. A lot of times, certain things, if we're just intolerant, a lot of times, certain things we can reintroduce like in small controlled amounts, right? Like you said, you can get away with a little bit of corn chips, something like that. For myself, I could get away with maybe a little bit of gluten, but it doesn't take much to start filling that bucket up again. So yeah, so that really makes sense with, being able to tolerate those things versus gluten where you're just like, I'm going to cut it out completely because any little bit in your case, even a tiny little speck could cause a reaction for you.
I think the way that I try to explain it, and I don't know the scientific or whatever with it, but for me, it's like as you get older, your body matures. And it's like just like your mind, you get smarter, your body becomes more and more aware, like, okay, that's not working. So I think
Mhm.
that it sends the uh red flags and press the eject button a whole lot sooner because it just knows it's more aware.
Yeah, it's like you should know better by now.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. So, talk to me about how you became a chef. What's the story there? Did you always know you wanted to become a chef, or like how did you get into that?
Um, my mom passed away when I was 12 years old. So from there, we went to live, me and my twin, went to go live with our father. He was always in our lives, but it was like a split thing. So we went to go there, live there permanently. He has a few other children as well. So it was a full house. Um, he was a postal carrier, so he would get home exhausted and still try to cook for us. So when I was like 14, I decided to, start helping out and getting in the kitchen to at least make it one less thing for him to do. And then I started to realize it was also a way for me to de-stress from all the things that were going on, even with losing my mom. So I realized that being in the kitchen was like my little happy place. Cooking for my siblings, though, was a mission because kids don't have a filter, and especially siblings, and they were like serious critics. and I had to get good fast.
There's a lot of
I got
pressure,
good
huh?
fast, so I wouldn't get verbally abused by the siblings, and that would hurt my feelings. So, and then I got really good at baking as well. I started selling chocolate chip cookies like this size for $1 at
Oh.
school and helped me pay for prom. Um, so when it was time to come to picking colleges, I got accepted into 6 colleges, including the one that I really wanted to go to, which was UC Santa Cruz. Beautiful campus. So I had the decision to make: go here and try to pick something that I want to grow up to be, or go here knowing that it's going to disappoint some family, but in my heart, I know that I want to cook.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to go to culinary school, Le Cordon Bleu in Pasadena, which
Mm-hmm.
was, still close to home, from LA. It's not that far and it's beautiful there. So I decided to go to culinary school. And at first, I was a little bit shaky about it because my twin sister went to UC Santa Barbara. The boyfriend at the time went to San Jose, and it was like everyone was going to college. And I'm like, did I make the right decision?
Mm-hmm.
But from there, I started working in restaurants, and I knew that it was my thing. I didn't go gluten free as a chef until maybe a couple of years later from college.
Okay. Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. So how did the gluten-free tie in with becoming a chef, and was that a difficult decision for you? Was that kind of heartbreaking, like, oh man, I have to be gluten-free, or were you just kind of like, I'm going to make the best of it. Let me become actually a gluten-free chef and, do the things that I wish I would have been able to have when I was younger, kind of thing.
I wish it was like that right off the bat, but it was a little bit of rebellion in there, because gluten is delicious. Um, so when we went paleo, it was like 2011. And then once I realized, okay, I can't go back to my old habits because of how ill it was making me, I knew that I had to transition. So finding like gluten-free products to work with, even just, a little bit more than a decade ago,
Mm-hmm.
it was
Mm-hmm.
difficult. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like everything tasted like cardboard. It
Mm-hmm.
just didn't have the same texture. It was always like double the price, and
Yep.
it was just frustrating. So after a while, I'm like, okay, I know how to make things, with gluten. It's time to start making it without it, because I know that I'll be able to make it better than what's in the grocery stores for this much money.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically like the jump start of educating myself on flour blends and what would actually work. And it's like when you taste a cinnamon roll, you know what it's supposed to taste like growing up
Yeah.
all the time having it. But it's just a matter of experimenting to get it there. So it's been over a decade of experimenting and getting things right, and much more comfortable now. So uh,
Yeah.
I went totally gluten free, basically like getting more confidence from it, with family members if they come over. Of course, I'm not making anything with gluten, but the more they would start telling me like, oh, I couldn't even tell, it helped
Mm-hmm.
boost my confidence up of
Yep.
okay, I can make this work into an actual, gluten-free
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Mm.
same. I went gluten-free back in like 2013, so been just over 10 years, and it there sure weren't a lot of options back in those early days. Like you said, things tasting like cardboard, and just, most restaurants not having good options. So it was a lot more
You're
challenging
getting a
than.
salad.
Yeah, I know, right? You get to have a salad again. So yeah, it's definitely improved so much over the years. But and then for me, it was also kind of a blessing in disguise because I gave up sugar at the same time, because so many of the goods, like you were saying, the baked goods,
Mhm.
they're gonna have the gluten, they're gonna have the sugar. And so I was just like, in my desperation and stubbornness, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna give up gluten and sugar at the same time. I'm just gonna cut out like all baked goods. For years, I didn't even eat bread at all,
Mhm.
and just kind of like adapted to that. So I kind of wanted to also talk about what are some things that when people give up gluten, and yes, of course, now there's lots of good gluten-free products out there, and you have some of your own, which we're going to discuss in a little bit, which I'm really excited about. But what are some things, like some go-to, some staples that people can like switch over to that are gluten-free that people might not necessarily know?
There's a lot of good products now. You can find them at regular grocery stores like Whole Foods or Trader Joe's that are pretty good. There's a lot more gluten-free breads out there. But at the same time, I wouldn't heavily depend on these options because there's
Mhm,
still a lot of additives and stuff that can
mhm.
bloat you and secret ingredients where it's like, ooh, this is not the healthiest. But if it's something that you know, like every now and then, I want an avocado toast. I'm Californian. I
Yes,
want an
yes.
avocado toast.
Yeah.
I want to go get the bread, or if I want a grilled cheese sandwich, and then that's okay. But there's cornbread, there's cookies, there's cakes, a lot of different options now that you can change it to. Even uh, ice creams that you wouldn't expect, like gluten-free brownie ice cream.
Yeah. So speaking of that, what are some like sneaky little ways that gluten can be hidden that people should watch out for? Like, yeah, we're aware of like bread or pasta or things like that. We need to get that gluten free. But what are some like sneaky ways that it could show up, especially if someone's like going out to eat or something
Oh
like
yeah.
that?
A perfect example of that I had to learn early on when I went gluten-free, because I'm like, I didn't even eat gluten. What's going on? It's in things like soy sauce, for example, and they put it in there to help speed up the fermentation process. And everything you want when you're a manufacturer or a business company is to speed up your production so you can get it out there. And especially since gluten's cheap.
Hmm.
So they do put it in a lot of products like that. And what do you think of soy sauce? Soy sauce is in almost everything
So
that
much.
so much. Um, just different products like that where you really want to just read the ingredient label because it might be in there as a thickener. There's a lot of
Hmm.
products that have them in there as thickeners. It's cheap.
Hmm.
So it's just something you want to be aware of and get comfortable with reading in the packaging.
I love that you said that because that's something I'm always doing myself and I'm always like telling clients and encouraging people to do is like don't trust big food
Yeah.
companies even if the packaging looks nice or looks fine. Always read the label because you really need to know what's in there and they have such a sneaky way of
Mhm.
sneaking these things in. And so when you take your health into your own hands, you really need to just get in the habit of reading those labels.
Yeah, and I will say, reading the label also lets you, like, if you're really celiac or really allergic, you also want to look out for if it says made in a facility that contains, gluten, because
Mhm.
even though I'm sure they do their part and wipe things down, sometimes you just never know, something might get missed. So if you're really, really allergic, you should be careful with that.
Yeah, watch out for that
Also,
cross-contamination.
there's a lot of products out there that aren't gluten-free, technically, like certified, but they don't contain gluten. Um, Sometimes for the company, it's thousands of dollars just to be able to put a sticker on there that says that it's gluten-free. So a lot
Yeah,
of companies won't do it. And
yeah,
then you're missing out on that product that you can probably actually eat
yeah,
because it doesn't have that label. So
right.
reading the ingredients helps with that as well.
Yeah, so what about something like oatmeal, for example?
So oatmeal, again, it might be processed in a facility that contains gluten. I usually look for that certified gluten-free label
Yeah,
for
yeah,
products like that
yeah,
because it comes from a meal and that equipment might be a little bit harder to get in the crevices and get the little flour residue out of there. So
yeah.
there's certain products where it's like you have to think about the process that it goes to from when it's grown to when it's
Mm.
gets to your table.
Yeah.
So food is a delicate thing, and I guess people don't really realize it, but when you have an allergy like this, and especially depending on how intense it is, you want to be really careful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like things like oatmeal for, like we were just saying, that's actually gluten-free in and of itself.
Mhm.
But like Jasmine was, I
Exactly.
love that you brought this point up is that, we always have to think, how is it being processed?
Mhm.
And what is happening along the way and what it can get exposed to. So I love that advice of if you're really sensitive, always look to see, because so many brands now have like that made in the certified gluten-free facility.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's a wonderful thing to look out for. So what advice would you give someone who's thinking about going gluten-free, or maybe they just got a diagnosis, or maybe someone in their life like their child
Oh yeah.
found out that they need to be gluten-free and they're maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Like, what kind of advice would you give them?
It's gonna be okay. Is the first thing because I know it can be a lot, and it's like, "Oh!" Especially just not even knowing what it is, and, if it's your child, I have a seven-year-old son, and he has reactions as well, but he's definitely more on the tolerant side. Luckily, if it's a pizza party or something at school, I can let him get away with a slice. Um, but I know that in the beginning, he was having a lot of like allergies as well. And it's just really a matter of educating yourself, and a quick Pinterest search. You could find a good recipe
Yeah.
nowadays. So it's going to be okay, but you're going to feel more okay with more educational information. So don't be afraid to go on YouTube, Google, whatever the case may be, and just really just zone in and find out like what works for you.
Mhm.
Obviously, kids are picky as is. So it's going to take a little bit longer with children. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but
Mhm.
it's going to be okay. It's just a matter of really getting in there and making yourself more aware and reading those labels.
Yeah.
Read those
Yeah.
labels.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah. Good advice. So what are some like common questions that you get asked as a gluten-free chef?
What is gluten? Where can they go find gluten-free products? What to look out for? Um, when people want to go gluten-free, but they don't know where to start, it's just basically like, what I tell them is you have to just go cold turkey. Um, I feel like gluten as well as like processed sugar and other sugars is all a bit addictive. And uh habit wise too. It's like when you wake up and you have a slice of toast or a bagel with cream cheese in the morning, you might not think of it like habitual, but it is. And it's hard to break habits even if there's something that small. Because, for example, I know I love coffee every single morning. When I was
Mhm.
pregnant, the baby disagreed with that. So it was hard to really cut it out. And I was stubborn about it until like every morning it was like, "Ugh, ugh." So you have to change your habits too. So going cold turkey will be hard, but at the end of the day, if you really want to make that change, it's the best way to do it when it comes to gluten.
Yeah, yeah, and we are such creatures of habits. That's such a good thing to say. I think, humans are a little ritualistic, like, coffee in the morning or, certain comfort foods or like, having that bagel with cream cheese. We get in those habits and I think that they comfort us. So when we go to change things, it's not just, oh, I'm cutting this out. It's like I'm literally changing my
You're
lifestyle or
changing your
maybe
life.
changing a little bit of who I am, right? Because I was
Yeah.
identifying with those things. So that can definitely be a challenging thing. But, like you were saying with gluten, even a little bit of gluten can be so irritating, especially if you're already in that like full blown inflamed state, that at that point it is really better just to cut it out completely. And if you can do that for a month consistently, you're going to feel so much better that I think that will give you the motivation that you need versus, and it can be hard with, and I don't know what your experience with this was, but with friends and family and well-meaning people who are like, oh, well, it's just a little bit of gluten. It's just a little bit. Surely you can just have this little bit, and you're like, no,
Yeah.
not how
That's
it
all
works. A
the
little bit could
time.
hurt me. Did you have that too?
That's all the time because especially when I started, I was in my early 20s and you go out with friends and it could be something as simple as like and something you wouldn't really expect like a shot of whiskey.
Right? Or like
You know?
beer or something like
And
that.
they're like, "Come on, what do you mean?" And it's like,
Mhm.
whiskey will tear me up.
Yeah.
So,
Trying to kill me.
there's like certain things and then working in the culinary industry, you're surrounded by food.
Oh yeah.
So you can have a cook come up to you and like, "Hey, taste this," because they just want feedback. And as their manager, of course, you want to give them feedback, but there's just
Mhm.
certain things that you want to avoid for the
Yeah, for sure.
so I think it's like sometimes people do it and they just really don't know, and it's like even if they know that you're gluten free, you don't know how many times people I would tell them like a dozen times Oh, I
Yes.
should eat that. Oh, yeah, I forgot. I'm sorry. So sometimes it's just really not intentional. And
Mm,
I think just don't take it personal. It's an allergy and you're dealing with it and
yeah.
used to it. So
Yeah. And those healthy boundaries. It's just a good excuse to practice having those healthy boundaries with people. And
yeah.
then another thing I just kind of wanted to insert, because I know we talked about this before we got on here, is other sources like that might be irritating people that come along with gluten, like say crops getting sprayed with
Okay.
pesticides. Like wheat is just so heavily sprayed with glyphosate. And I think people often don't realize, when we used to harvest wheat, we would harvest it and it would have to be laid out to dry. And then companies figured out, well, if we spray it with pesticides like glyphosate, it just
Mhm.
dries up right away and just cuts down on that time. So, again, like looking to save money. Companies are,
Yeah.
taking shortcuts like this, or, how many grains and products out there are GMO now.
Mm.
So, I mean, I think a lot of times, yes, we might be it's certainly indeed celiac or sensitive to gluten, but I'm just wondering how many people out there are also reacting to not even the original food, but the way it was
Process.
adulterated and processed along the way,
Yeah.
right?
I wonder that as well. I know there's a lot of GMO foods, and you can even see it. And I'll go back to being a mom. Growing up, you'll eat foods or fast food, and you didn't have that same gut reaction. Whereas if you look at the product ingredients nowadays, it's a different story. And I
Oh my
feel
gosh,
like
yes.
a lot of these are not just affecting like your gut, it's also affecting other things. Like my friend and I were just talking about the menstrual cycles starting sooner and sooner in kids.
Hmm.
And you have to really look at what you're eating because it's like sometimes it can easily be ignored, but um a lot of these things are happening because of the big bucks.
Right. Yeah.
Mm,
Or how many kids now are like hyperactive, right? Having trouble focusing and
yes.
concentrating, and yet they're eating all of this. I always like to call it's a food-like substance. It's not even really food, right? Like those brightly colored foods that are filled with like
Mhm.
artificial food dyes, things that are actually toxic to the brain. And,
Mhm.
we're giving them to children. And then we wonder why they go to school and they can't concentrate, they can't focus, they can't calm down. Right. So yeah, I think that's such a
Cereal
good.
is a big thing. All kids love
Yes.
cereal, and they all have those food colorants and stuff. And like I said earlier, like in the 90s, eating cereal, you didn't even think about it.
Right.
But it's just getting worse and worse with the ingredient list is going like this and
Yes.
this,
Yes.
getting more and more insane. So it's
Yeah.
scary out there. And I say the best thing to do is to invest in your health when it comes to your food. Otherwise, you're going to be paying for it when you're older.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So speaking of that, I really want to get into the products that you have developed, because when I learned that you were developing your own gluten-free products, just knowing how passionate you are about cooking and like what a craft it is for you, I was like, "Ooh, I need to get my hands on these products." So I actually have one of them right here. So
Hey, that's
if
the
you're
number.
watching the YouTube version, we have the buttermilk cornbread mix. This, oh my God, so good.
Thank you.
Yeah, so tell our listeners more about the products that you're developing.
So I have three products to start now, and I decided to develop them because like friends and family would reach out, especially those who thinking about starting going gluten free, but they don't know where to start. And I was like, I really want products that can help people in the kitchen. And I know when I first started out cooking for the mean siblings, I got started with box mixes, and because they're just helpful. And if you don't really know how to cook just yet, or maybe you just don't have the time, and trust me, as a working mom, it's like sometimes you just don't have the time or the energy. So I really wanted products that can help people in the kitchen with time, be gluten free, and something that we're all used to. Like the cornbread mix, it's something that's in everybody's pantry. Chocolate chip cookies as well. It's my other product.
Yeah.
And fudge chocolate cake because
Ooh. Because why not? Because we shouldn't
why
be
not? It's
denied.
cake. I love cake. And chocolate was my favorite growing up. It's still one of my favorites. Just products that people can feel confident in knowing that it's going to taste unnoticeably gluten-free, uh,
Mhm.
because no one wants to bring that gluten-free item to the party that's just sitting there.
That no
You're
one else
like,
wants.
so sad." But these are products you can feel confident in, knowing that they're delicious, and I've gotten so much feedback over the years of tweaking these recipes, that I was like, "Okay, I feel confident enough to share with everyone else, so you can feel confident sharing with everyone else."
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly why I wanted it. Like I'm not, despite being a dietitian and I know how to cook, but it's not a passion of mine. So I really always respect people that, like you, that is your passion, that is your craft. You kind of always knew that you wanted to do that. And so I was just so excited because I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. Jasmine's product is, I know it's going to be reliable. Like it's something that if I'm cooking for other people, cooking for the family, even going somewhere, I know that I can grab this product and people are going to like it. No one's going to know it's gluten free. It's not going to be dry. It's going to taste good. And it's something that is consistent, right? Every single time it will deliver. So
Thank
yeah, I love that. And I was so impressed with it.
thank you. I
Yeah.
also do, private chef gigs, and usually, the menus that they choose, they are all able to be gluten-free. And usually I'll make it gluten-free just because I'm the one making it and eating it. So
Yeah.
when I take it, for example, I had one client that ordered empanadas, and at the end of it, there were beef empanadas. At the end of it all, I was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, the empanadas are
And they didn't
gluten-free."
even
And they were
know.
like, "What? Really?" So I'm like, I'm happy that they didn't notice, of course, but it's
Mhm.
also just surprising to get their reactions because I think that a lot of people really think negatively of gluten.
Yeah.
But like today things are getting much better, but I get it. It's
Yeah.
kind of just like the funk from the past. Things are getting better, and more products are becoming
Yeah,
more
you're
available.
redefining what it means to be gluten free. Okay, so you have the cornbread, you have the cake mix, you have the cookie mix. Are there any other kind of products that maybe you're thinking about coming out with in the future? You said empanadas, and I was like, how can I get my hand on that recipe?
Um, Looking for feedback on those, but I was thinking, buttermilk biscuits, because that's
Mm,
something that I love and my son loves.
yep.
Um, Maybe vanilla cake mix, oatmeal raisin cookies, snickerdoodle
Mhm.
cookies, because that was recommended a few times.
Okay.
Products like that. My website, Be Free Cafe, I do have a lot of recipes on there as well. Lunching next Saturday. I'm excited and nervous.
Yay!
um, I have a lot of gluten-free recipes on there, and I want to make sure that I put a lot of the staples, even making like homemade pasta, because that's one of the things that I really missed when I went gluten-free.
Yeah.
Homemade pasta with the egg in there, just fresh pasta. And a lot of these options are possible. So I really want
Mm,
to showcase that, especially for those who uh, are brand new to this or been in it for a while and haven't had a good pasta or whatever the case may
right.
be
Didn't
in
even
years.
realize that that was an option kind of thing.
Mhm,
I love
exactly.
that you're expanding that.
Thank
In the
you.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So what are some ways that people can follow you, work with you, access your products? Where can people find you? Give us all the ways.
BeFreeCafe.com, but also I'm on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Pinterest, all the normal social medias there. So, mhm.
And I follow you on Instagram and you guys, her recipes, oh my God, your recipe videos, like you get a step by step, everything looks
Yeah,
beautiful, like she shows you what to do. Many times
yeah,
we've
we're
recreated
visual
these
creatures.
recipes. Yeah, many times we've recreated these recipes. They are always so good. If you guys need like inspiration, definitely go follow Jasmine because you will not be disappointed.
Thank
Yes,
you.
this woman is about her craft. If you are gluten free or anyone you know is gluten free or even just considering maybe cutting out gluten, you need to check out Jasmine because she will help guide you on how to do that and how to do that in a way that's delicious and sustainable and something that you're actually
That's important. I would say definitely go for it if you're thinking about it because of the benefits that you really do get when you pay attention to your gut health. I feel like your gut health really leads to your mind health. And also, when you look in the mirror, you're gonna notice the difference too. So it's a win-win. It's gonna be a hard process just to get out those habits of what you're used to. And I explained this to my family members. I was thinking about it as well. But like you're gonna feel the difference first, and then you're gonna see the difference. And you're gonna not want to go back because then when you do go back, your body's gonna tell you.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, so
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like you want to listen to yourself and why not clear out the bad, you know? So give it a try at least for sure.
Exactly. Love that. Awesome advice. So if this has been helpful, you guys, please like and share. Send it to people you know that maybe going gluten-free or that you think might benefit from it, because this is just such a wonderful thing that you can do for your health. And like Jasmine said, it might seem overwhelming, but it's really not that hard, and the benefits are going to far outweigh the costs. So
Mhm.
Jasmine, thank you so much for being on. I
For
loved
having
having this
me.
conversation. That was great. And thank you for tuning in. Until next time.
Bye, you guys.